Hi everyone. I decided to make this video today just to go through everything you'll need to know for the upcoming study. I thought this was the easiest way to disseminate all of the information to you, so we don't have to schedule times to meet. And yeah, so here's everything you'll need to know. And I just want to start off by saying thank you so much for deciding to be a part of this study. I really appreciate it, and it will be great help to me and my research. Just a few quick notes before I start talking more about the study. If you haven't completed the consent form, that is top priority. You need to get that and sign it in and create your own participant ID number before we can start anything with the study. Secondly, if you haven't picked your piece yet, please pick that soon and try to record a complete run through of the piece, sight reading, brand new, before Monday, so we have something to compare this practicing to. And once you pick that piece, let me know and send me a copy of it so I can break it down into the sections, which I'll talk more about later in this video. And if you haven't yet completed the pre-study questionnaire, it's not the most important to do before the beginning of the study, but the sooner the better, so you can look back on how you normally practice and compare it to what you are interacting with now in these different practice techniques. So once you have chosen your piece of music, you'll send that to me, and I will divide it into 5 different sections of music. And for each of those sections, you'll use a different form of practicing. So the first one could be physical practice, mental practice, singing, combined practice, and then no practice at all, which serves as the control for the research. Each section of learning and each practice technique will be used in 15-minute segments of learning and practice. So that will be broken down into 6 minutes of practicing, 3 minutes of rest, and ending with 6 more minutes of practice. And if you don't have the Seconds Pro app, please shoot me an email and let me know, and I will sponsor a purchase so you can use this in your practice sessions. And it's a really helpful tool regardless, and I think it'll be great. And I could show you how to work it too if you need. So yeah, just let me know. Starting at the practice journal, we're going to start by outlining 2 specific goals. And those are defined as outcome goals, or what you want to achieve by the end of the study, and performance goals, which are goals that help you to achieve your outcome goals. So outcome goals are big, big picture goals that you look forward to. And don't worry, I know it's the beginning of the study, you don't really have big outcome goals, but just try to think of something, try to think of what you want to get out of the study. And each week you'll have the chance to go back and reevaluate and make changes. So just go with your gut feeling. What do you want to achieve by the end of the study? Performance goals are broken down into different categories. So priority performance goals, basically, what are your performance goals? What do you want to, how do you want to achieve your outcome goals? What's going to help you in this performance? Next, you're going to outline key skills that are needed to achieve your outcome goals. This could be articulation. This could be you need to work on your triple tonguing, kind of those kind of things. Next are weaknesses that impact your goals. So I need to work on my airflow, things that are holding you back for these specific sections. And then finally, you're going to rate your level of technical skills required for your outcome goals. So that's kind of a way to assess where you want to be and where you are now. And hopefully over the weeks, it'll meet in the middle. From there, you're going to use the practice journal, and you'll have 1 page of practicing for each session of practicing that you do, for each 15-minute interval that you use each day. So I'll just go through one and I'll write in examples of what I'll do. So first you'll start with writing the section of music that you're working on. For you, it'll be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. For me, I'm just working on the bone from rehearsal B to rehearsal C, so I'll write that in section of music. And then the technique you'll be using, so physical practice, mental practice, combined practice, or singing. I'll be doing combined practice just to show you how that's going to work. And next, you'll start by writing out your SMART goals. And these are a way to really center your goals, instead of, I want my sound to be better, I want my articulation to be better, but really specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-bound goals for this one 15-minute section. So it's really a way to write one goal that's achievable in this time that's really specific, so you can build off of that. So for example, in this boom section, I want my working on those arpeggios. I tend to push towards the top note, so I want to focus on relaxing up to the top note and letting it sing at the top. So that's my first goal. My second goal is in the faster section. I tend to clip those articulation. So really focusing on dun da dia da 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 dum. So I would write something like airflow during articulation, or keep airflow steady, something similar to that. And finally, the most specific of these goals is in the section of the so that F sharp, that high F sharp to the low A, it's never as clear as I want it to be. So just working on making that connection from the F sharp to the low A as smooth and as clear as possible. And with these SMART goals, you can break down and use a lot of different tools that you have at your disposal. And I'll talk more about these later when I give advice for using each of the practicing techniques. But it doesn't have to just be, this is my goal, and I'm just gonna play until I achieve it. But this is my goal, and I'll use buzzing to help me achieve it. I'll use chunking the different passages, things like that, that I will explain more later. From there, once you have your goals, you'll practice the whole session, and then you'll circle whether or not you achieved your goals, from 1, no, I did not, definitely did not achieve my goals, to 5, yes, I completely achieved my goals. I got everything done I wanted to. Next, you'll rate your level of enjoyment with this technique. So this has nothing to do with how it went, if you think it helped you. It's just, did you enjoy using it? This could be, I was stressed out, and I didn't like it. It's new to me, so I was a little uncomfortable using it. And that's the same scale, 1 definitely not, to 5 completely. And finally, your level of confidence after practicing with this technique. This relates to how the practicing went. And this is more of like, as soon as this is done, if someone was asking you to play it for them, this one section of music, how confident would you feel in performing that for them? Cool. And then you'll write what you did during your rests. I know none of us are good with rests. Sometimes I meditate during my rests. Sometimes I do breathing, but also sometimes I'm on my phone, and that's okay, and that's natural, and that's something that we all should get better at. And just you don't have to change anything you do. I would encourage you to meditate. I would encourage you to drink water, walk around, do things that are healthy, stretch, or I don't know, do anything that's healthy. But if you don't, that's okay. Just do what's comfortable for you, what you normally do, and just write it down. Just keep track. This is all about journaling and watching our progress. And then there's a big section for additional notes. This could be specifics of what you liked or what you didn't like about this. More specifics about what you did during your rest. If you use specific techniques, if you use chunking, if you use buzzing to help you achieve your SMART goals, those are all great things to put in that section. At the end of the day, the last grouping of these pages of the practice journal is just a wrap up of the day. And that'll go through just generals about your day. The amount of listening you did to does not have to be about the piece you're playing. Any listening, any music intake that you did, from less than 30 minutes to 2+ hours, just circle it. The amount of daily exercise you did. If you didn't do any, that's okay. If you did a bunch, great, that's awesome. The amount of water intake. This one's kind of tricky to judge unless you have a Nalgene like I do, which tells you in ounces how much water I drink, which is great. If you don't have a Nalgene, I would recommend getting one. I love my Nalgene. If you don't, just estimate. You can look up conversions, how many cups of water you drink, if you have a water bottle, just figure out how many ounces it is and how many times you fill it up. It does not have to be exactly measured. Don't pour out 32 ounces and drink it all, or 64, to make sure you get how much you want. Just your best guess is all I can ask for. Next, you're going to pick which technique you felt the most comfortable using. This can change from day to day. This can change from week to week. So just circle which one you felt the most comfortable, and then circle the one you felt led to the most progress in your practice sessions for the day. That can also change from day to day. You don't have to think too hard, just your gut instinct. What felt the best? What did you think led to the most progress? And circle it. That can usually line up with the level of achievement of your goals that you circled in the rest of your practice journal pages. So just keep that in mind when you're thinking about it. And then another section for additional notes if you have things to write, like even just things about your day. This was a hard day for me. I struggled to practice today, because that all affects things. This is a really real world approach to a research study, so it's really trying to take into account everything that you're going through, and it's so complicated to measure that. But just try your best. You'll use that whole approach to journaling for 5 days each week. I'll send you out an updated journal for each week. It might change, it might stay exactly the same, depending on you guys, and depending on me, and depending on the feedback you give me. So please feel free to give me feedback and changes you'd like made, and I'd be happy to help with that. So after 5 days of practicing, the 6th day, or Saturdays, will be performance days. These you'll just run through the whole piece, and you'll have a judge who will listen and rank you on a set of criteria that I don't really need to get into, but note accuracy, rhythm accuracy, but also things like your musical expression and your tone and things like that are more subjective, but having a panel will help to kind of measure it as measurable as music can be. So great. You'll do that performance assessment, and then after that, you'll do a notation of your piece. You'll try to notate your piece from memory as best as possible. That'll also be compared with the music that you've given me, and that's just another way to test your retention of the piece, your ability to remember the musical passages. So yes, and then the 7th day is a rest day. You don't have to take time off of your instrument completely. I suggest it, I recommend it. I love taking days off. I think you should too. But if you don't, just don't practice this piece. You can play as much as you want any other piece, but just don't practice this piece is all I ask. And great, and that's the whole experiment. We'll do that for 4 weeks, and at the end, I might give you a survey just to get overall impressions about the entire process as a whole. And I'd love your feedback just on the study itself, and anything I can do to help you out. Great. So now I will talk more about the different practice techniques and give you tips and tools for using each of these techniques. So the first practice technique I want to talk about is physical practice, because it's probably the one you most likely use. It's the most common type of practicing, and it's probably the one you're most comfortable and familiar with. And physical practice is just defined as physically playing your instrument. So using this to achieve your goals. So I'm going to break it down a little bit more and give you tips for using physical practice more effectively. And keep in mind, all of these tips can be applied to mental practice and singing. I'll explain more of that in just a second. So I'm going to start with just one section of the Boom Trumpet Concerto. Yeah, so this is just the section that I'm going to be working on. So there's a lot of ways you can break down physical practice into different ways to achieve your goals. First and foremost, you could do what's called chunking. And chunking is taking a bigger passage of music and breaking it into little sections. I usually use this for faster passages to help make it more manageable, big runs and things like that. So I broke down each of those bigger arpeggios into smaller arpeggios. From there, you'd add on. Add the chunks together and overlap them so it's working on connecting the whole passage instead of learning the individual chunks, because you have to take those chunks and eventually connect them all. Another great thing you could do with practicing is to change the rhythm. I typically do like a dotted rhythm, and then I would do the opposite. And that way you're learning the intervals faster than you'll need them. So it's over practicing and being able to train your body to do it, your body and your mind to be able to do it faster than you need to. And from there, you can add extra dots. These are just examples. I would break it down slower and for longer intervals, but these are just quick demonstrations. Additionally, you could do different things with your metronome. Probably a common thing you were taught is start slow and work your way up in quick intervals. So start at 60, then 62, then 64. And this is great. Just a few tips with using a metronome. Try to use it in different ways than you normally do. So instead of just going try to use it as the offbeat. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 1, 2, 3, 4. And what that does is it helps you to build your internal rhythm. So you're not following the metronome, but you're playing with it. It's part of the music. And if you have tonal energy, you can go to use random beat silencing. You can go to random beat silencing, and that just randomly takes out beats, which is another great way to use a metronome. You can also set it at half tempo, and this is another great way to work on your internal sense of time. If you don't have tonal energy but want to use the random beat silencing, which takes that and makes it random, there's an app called Time Guru that's a free app, and it's the same thing. You can randomly silence beats. It's a great tool to use. So as I mentioned earlier, all of these practicing strategies can be used with any of the practice techniques that you'll be using. You can mentally practice chunking. You can also swing it in your head too. You can sing it. Using all of those techniques, you can take them and apply them to each of the different learning techniques that you'll be using. If you want more, if you have questions about those specifically and how to use them, reach out to me. But yeah, that's it for physical practice. Let's talk about the other forms of practice. So next, I'm going to talk about mental practice, and mental practice is probably the most interesting to talk about. In many studies, it's been shown that it's difficult to compare physical practice to mental practice because a lot of musicians haven't interacted with mental practice in their normal day-to-day practice. So I'll just go through exactly what I've learned about mental practice and tips for you if you are just experiencing mental practice or if you've used it before and just want to learn more. So there are two main types of mental practice that you're going to use: motor practice or auditory practice. Motor practice, motor mental practice refers to mentally imagining the fingerings that you'll be playing or the embouchure that you'll be playing. So I'm just going to demonstrate on my trumpet, but if I was mentally practicing, I wouldn't be using trumpet at all, completely apart from the instrument and just envisioning, imagining. But just for clarity's sake, I'll demonstrate what I would be thinking about. So if I'm doing that same passage, so that's me using the motor imagery to practice this section. I'm mentally imagining the fingerings I'll be using, the air I'll be using, and that's the way to practice it. You can chunk it. You can swing the rhythm. You can do all of those things I talked about in the last segment in your mental practice. You can also use auditory mental practice, which is imagining the pitches. And just hearing the song in your head. And if you get really good at mental practice, you can combine the two, which is the best way to do it, in my opinion. But both of them have their place. If you need to work on the fingerings more, use motor imagery. If you need to hear the pitches better, use auditory imagery. But for now, in your practice journal, just jot down which you use and which you're more comfortable with. And try to experience both. Try out auditory mental practice. Try out motor mental practice if you don't normally do it. And that's the best way to do it, is to try and try new things. So yes, just to recap, you will not be using your instruments at all for mental practice. So it'll look really funny when someone's walking by your practice room and you're just staring at your music. But that's the best way to isolate mental practice as a form of practice. If you have your instrument, you're technically doing more than mental practice because you're physically doing the motor requirements of performance. So it's not mental. Just tips for mental practicing specifically. Many studies have shown that when you're mental practicing, focus on key musical features within the piece. This could relate to the theory of the piece. Talking about the first chord in this music, it's a D major arpeggio starting on a low A. So that tangible musical feature is important to latch onto. When you're using the theory knowledge you have for mental practice, you're making connections between the way the music sounds and the knowledge you have of music. And that's the great thing about mental practice, is it bridges the gap of what you've learned in music theory and applies it to your instrument. And that's what I think is so great about it. So please use this time, use your theory knowledge, analyze some chords, look for patterns in music too. There's a pretty easy pattern accessible. There's arpeggios that are repeating. But what you can do with that is make those arpeggios different. Is each arpeggio going to sound the same? This one's major, so I want it to be a little bit louder. This one's minor, so maybe I'll add a crescendo at the end because it's driving somewhere. That kind of analysis is really what's going to take your mental practice from I'm sitting there staring at my music to I'm practicing my music and I'm getting better through this process. So things to keep in mind. Mental practice is tricky. It takes practice, so stick with it. If you have questions, if you want to run any mental practice tips by me, if you're struggling, let me know. Happy to help. Next, I'm going to talk about singing and using that for a practice session. So if you're not a singer, that's okay. It's okay if you don't like the sound of your voice. It's okay if you crack notes. It's okay if you don't sing often. Just enjoy it, experience it. Singing is so important for us as brass players because it takes our mental imagery of the music and lets us express it however we want to without the constraints of the instrument. If your articulation isn't as fast as you want it to be, or you're having trouble with one slur, your voice doesn't care. You're going to sing it however you want to sing it. So be really expressive. Whenever I am singing, I'll dance around and I'll be really dramatic with my gestures. So just have fun. That's the biggest thing I can suggest for you when singing. Specific singing tips: try your best to be on pitch with it. If you need to use a piano, if you need to give yourself cue notes from your instrument, don't use your instrument too much during this session. But if you need the starting note, or there's one specific interval, you can play it a little bit. I suggest, and I prefer if you did it on piano, but if you wanted to do it on your instrument really fast, that's okay too. Real world application, so apply it however you will. But use your voice as much as possible. And just enjoy it. Have fun. Specifically for singing, one big concept for singers is to have the connection from note to note. So if I'm working on this same section, da, I think is the A, da, I try to sing it in my best approximation of that octave. So I have to sing it an octave lower than the trumpet, but I keep everything. I don't go down octaves. Like I wouldn't go da da dee dum. I keep it in the higher octave when I can. So da dee da da. And a big thing with singers is keeping connection between the notes. Not da 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 da. And that's a big thing that we as or me as a brass player gets from singing in my practice is I take that connection from my singing and I bring it back into my trumpet playing. So try to listen for that connection when you're singing and then try to apply it to your trumpet. There's not much else I should say about singing. If you have very specific singing related questions, I've been taking voice lessons for a few months now, so I can dump on you all of the information that I've gotten. I also have a paper about the comparison between singing and trumpet playing. If you want to read that, shoot me an email and I'm happy to share that information that I have right now. Finally, combined practice is just combining all three of those. Specifically in relation to these sessions of practicing, they'll be broken down a little bit differently in these 15-minute intervals. So you'll do 2 minutes of physical practice, 1 minute of mental practice, a minute of singing, and then 2 minutes of physical practice. And these numbers are gathered from a few different studies that use similar breakdowns of practicing. And yes, so in the Seconds Pro app, I'll send you templates for each of them. The combined practice is the most tricky to get through because it uses what's called interleaved practice in that section. And interleaved practice is breaking down your big chunks of music and practicing into different into smaller sections. So instead of practicing for 6 minutes straight, you're practicing for 2 minutes, and then you're practicing using a different method for 1 minute, then 1 minute, then 2 minutes. And that's called interleaved practice, switching between multiple ways of learning. So this way of combined practice just takes that and breaks it down for you. And I'm going to demonstrate really quick how combined practice works, how this session would work. I'm not going to have you listen to the whole 15 minutes, so I'll just speed it up and have the Seconds Pro in the background so you can watch it as it goes through. And yeah, you can see how the time works and how I switch to singing to mental practice. And yeah, so that's it for the video. If you have any questions, please reach out. Thank you all so much for listening. Thank you all so much for agreeing to take part. And yeah, enjoy this 15-minute speed up of my practicing.